Welcome to the Chamber Matters. I'm Regina Montgomery, the Public and Member Relations Coordinator at the Chamber of Commerce. On this edition of the Chamber Matters, we're going to meet some influential women in our business community. These are women who help to contribute to the growth of business here locally in Dufferin County. Women entrepreneurs are one of the fastest growing segments of businesses here in Canada. And the Chamber of Commerce, of course, is a not-for-profit organization, and we work with many types of businesses to help them prosper and grow. And one of the committees under our umbrella is called the Dufferin Women in Business. And the Dufferin Women in Business is a group of women who hold monthly luncheons and invite other women in businesses to come to these events. And at those luncheons, they connect, they grow, and they build. And in 2012, the Dufferin Women in Business celebrated 10 years. So that's quite an accomplishment in our environment and in our business world. So our first guest today has quite a story to tell. She's had quite an accomplishment of 35 years in business and starting a business that was sort of not mainstream back 35 years ago. And so I'd like to thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about your business and tell us about Harmony Whole Foods Market and how it all started.
Well, I guess it started in the late 70s. I had spent a couple of years on the West Coast after I was out of university, and I actually worked at a food co-op in Victoria, BC, and I really got turned on about food and health and how nutrition was a really fundamental part of feeling good. So when I moved back to Ontario and I got married and I ended up somehow moving to Orangeville, it was a set of circumstances that were somewhat interesting that brought me here. I decided it would be a good idea to open a store and sort of replicate what I had seen happening on the West Coast. And there was a growing movement of food and health and supplements and things that were really kind of ahead of the curve. But it was quite an interesting experience to open a small business back then. I was young, I was very impressionable, I didn't have any money, I had a lot of passion for what I believed, and I was dedicated to make it happen. So it was a set of circumstances that I was very tenacious about, and I went to the Federal Business Development Bank and my local branch of one of our chartered banks. My mother-in-law loaned me money to buy a cash register, and I was in business. So I didn't really know what I was doing, and it is somewhat of a miracle that I have lasted this long and thrived actually in this community, but that's basically how it happened. And I opened my little store, my first little store on Broadway in 1978, and it was basically a bulk food store. I just believed in whole foods, foods without additives and without a lot of the dyes and colors and preservatives, and I believed that eating healthy meant eating very low on the food chain and cooking things from scratch, and it was way ahead of the curve, but I got a lot of people interested, and I think I pioneered a great story about taking charge of your own health through nutrition.
And today, I mean, holistic type products and businesses, they do well because people understand it better.
Yes.
But back then,
I know.
what were some of the challenges? I mean, again, you're talking about the West Coast and Vancouver, and this is Orangeville. So just how did you get that word out, and how did you get people into your store?
Well, it was a struggle. I was laughing with one of my staff the other day that I remember days when I didn't even have a customer come in. And I did everything. I was the only employee at the beginning, and on my day off, I went to Toronto and picked everything up that I sold because nobody delivered to Orangeville at that point. And I think it was word of mouth. You know, I did a little advertising. I actually wrote a column in the Orangeville Citizen that I think was really instrumental in getting it out. It was called For Your Health by Jennifer Grant, and I used to put a recipe and just a little nutrition information. And from there, I kind of developed a set of customers that were dedicated and came back and grew, and a lot of them had kids who worked for me over the years. And you know, I've been very blessed to have been such a part of this community and have had the ability to know so many people.
So it sounds like in business there's many challenges. I mean, you talk about starting out and how you didn't have the money and you had to borrow money to even just buy a cash register. But 35 years, we've seen a lot of changes.
Yes.
We've been through some recessions. We've been through some, a lot of economic changes. So how have you been able to ride that wave?
Well, I think it's dedication. I say that the biggest trait that any entrepreneur has to have is tenacity. You have to be able to believe in what you do and to figure out ways to survive when the going gets tough. And there have been many points in my career where I could have fallen off the edge that were, very tough when things weren't flowing and cash flowing, and challenges that came along. But I think one of the biggest things I'd have to say to any entrepreneur is to use the resources that are available in your community. I got lots of help from the Small Business Enterprise Center. I wasn't called that back then, but I joined the Businessmen's Association. I think I was one of the first young women, and I think I was a bit of a little pet for them because, I was so dedicated, I guess, to be part of the community. And I think to use those resources, I've had people along the way. I always got whatever free help there was available, and I listened and learned, and I think that that's the way to grow.
Now, there's another woman in the community who's been around for many, many years. We're going to take a look at her story. This is the story of Acheson's.
I think they find creativity here. They find ideas. I often have people drop in and they'll say, I needed a centerpiece for my table, or I'm entertaining. I knew if I came here I would see an idea or something that twigged it, and that you'll be able to help me with that. And I think they find unusual in that I travel all over the world. I go to China, I've been to Paris, go to a lot of the shows in the US, and I'm always looking for that different item, something I haven't seen before. So after doing this for, about 34 years now, I've seen a lot of stuff that's on the market, and I'm finding it harder and harder to find different things, just because of the way the market is right now. So, and people walk in the door here, and because of the decorations of the store itself, they'll just stand there and they'll go, wow. And that's where I get my gratification, that I've made somebody's day, or I've made them feel better. They'll often come in and say, I'm having a bad day, so I came in here for my fix. And that makes me feel good. Well, it actually wasn't a plan. I was a registered nurse by trade, and then I became an accountant. So when I married my husband, he had the pharmacy up in Harrison, and there weren't any jobs there that I could get. And rather than go crazy, I decided to open a little gift area in the pharmacy. And that just kept growing. It did well, so it kept growing. And then the box stores came into the area. And I made my target all the people from Toronto and Kitchener and Hamilton that were driving by that store, as they were my target market at that point. So I gained a reputation in Toronto and a lot of the other areas. And at that point I also advertised. I advertised in Style at Home magazine, which I have found a very good magazine to advertise in. And it just seemed to grow from there. And then I came up with the idea of designer events. So I would host luncheons, and I had Kimberly Seld and the designer guys when they were at the top of their show. We had them. And we showed decorating ideas, and I sold a lot of product at that show. And it just kept going for a while. I have stopped doing that now because it's out in the market too much. So I have a tendency now to do smaller things within the store. Well, at the beginning, I first started in business in the early 80s, and at that point, you could buy anything as a retailer, and people would buy it. And then the recession in the early 90s hit, and it became a different ball game at that point. It didn't matter what you bought, nobody would buy it. So I went through that stage. And now, of course, we all know about the box stores and discounters. Online shopping is big now. So these present challenges to the retailer at the brick and mortar store. And I guess it's just constantly doing things to make your shopping an experience in your business. That when people come in, they have fun. Like, people come in here and we know who they are, and it's hi this and hi that, and we know their families. And I also buy according to certain customers that come in the store all the time. So it's more personal. And my target group is probably 40 up. And a lot of people, like many of our customers, will ask for their email, and they don't have computers. So they still haven't quite hit that. So I think there's a niche in with this age group of customer, and that's who I'm targeting. Well, the Chamber is a group of merchants. It's not just retailers such as myself. And I think that as a group, they attract more people into the town. They have a common purpose. I guess you get to know the other business people in town. So you could meet someone at a luncheon and you run into a problem that you heard them talking about. You pick up the phone and you talk to them. And then there's the award presentations you have every year, and I think that's an honor for someone to win that, and it's something to aspire to. The gratification or the joy to me is, as I said before, when someone comes in, I'm able to give them what they wanted or more than what they wanted, and they leave my store happy. Or time and time again, I hear them coming in, they'll say, oh, that gift you recommended, people were just thrilled with it. This customer was just in, and she said, I bought a dress from here, and she said, every place I go, I get compliments. That fills my soul. It makes me feel good.
You did? That was interesting. I'm sure you can relate to what she was saying about the changing environment and how she did some things and then they had to change because other people started to catch on to that and then they started to do it. So she's had different things that she's implemented to keep her in business, but then she's also changed too. So instead of just doing the same old thing, and I'm sure I know you've done that. I've seen the changes in your stores. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think the changes I've seen mostly was I started in downtown Orangeville. I was a big champion of the downtown. I was actually the chair of the BIA for a number of years, and I really tried to keep businesses downtown. But as I grew, I found that parking was definitely an issue. And so I've had two moves in my career. I was 10 years on Broadway. I actually opened the Bluebird Cafe in 1982. Oh, wow. And had it for 4 years until it was sold. And I'm thrilled that it's still a thriving cafe. It's different than when I had it, but it's really great they kept the name. And then I moved to First and Broadway for 10 years, and I think the biggest change was taking the leap. I felt a bit like a turncoat moving out of the downtown, but when I had the opportunity to move to the plaza where I'm in now, it provided a huge opportunity to get bigger, to reach more people, and to have lots of parking so people could actually really shop.
You know, we could talk all day, and I really thank you so much for coming on. This is great, and if anybody has any questions, they can visit your website or come in and visit you. Yeah. I think that would be probably the best piece of advice. We're going to take a short break here on the Chamber Matters, but when we return, we're going to find out about starting a small business. So don't go away.